Well, welcome to the InnerWorks Podcast. And in this uplifting video, I am joined by Erin Gregory. And together, we're going to share our unique journeys of self-discovery, transformation, and embracing how to live your best life. And that might mean a radical change from what you're doing now. You may need to stop some things and start some new things. But at the end of the day, ask yourself, are you living your absolute best life? And with that said, Erin, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Erin.
Yeah, so Harvey, we've known each other for a few years now. We met while you were stationed at VA, and I was a consultant for you there. And that was really a pivotal point in my life because we were so ingrained in work that was involved in human behavior and how to incorporate human behavior into messaging and strategy and getting your best outcomes out of the work that you're doing. And it really helped me to stop and think about my own behavior and my own life and how I was living. My husband and I have been on this journey for several years now, since we had kids. Really, kids can have that impact on you, right?
Yes, they do.
And we started to think about everything from our health to the jobs that we were holding and whether or not we were being the example for them that we wanted, which was an example of living your best life. And ultimately focusing that life on happiness and peace and service and values that we really hold dear. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. A lot of the conversations we have had throughout our work has been centered around this philosophy of living your best life. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You know, Erin, you've heard me say before, it's a quote that I don't even know where I got it from, but I truly live by it, that the two greatest moments in your life are the day you're born and the day you realize why you're born. Because once you realize why you're born and you align yourself to that path, that's where the happiness begins. So when you say setting the example for yourself, setting the example for your kids, your family, your friends, that really begins with a happy Erin, or in my case, a happy Harvey. If I am not living my best life, it's hard to set that example because I'm not being authentic, and they know it. They know it too. So at some point, and one of the things I want to get to is you have a book coming out, right?
I do, yeah.
And I want to hear a little bit about that book because for the audience, I've had a chance to preview the book, and I found it to be amazing. And one of the things that I very much admire about Erin is she will make bold choices to change her life. And you were influenced by friends, right, to do that? Because I read somewhere in the book where you had this amazing set of friends that just radically changed their lives. And now they're living what appeared to be, and I would say still is, their best life. True? Yes? No?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. They just returned from a 4-month world cruise with their 3 children. So I would say they are certainly living their best lives. And the story title is still in final review, so I'm not going to release the title yet. But the story is about this sort of realization that we had in part when we met them. It was a journey that my husband and I were going on at the time. We were living in a small town, and it just wasn't a fit for us, and we felt it, but we were still living it. And we were also buried deep in the little kid zone. Our children were 5, 3, and 1, and it was just a lot. I was working full time. He was working full time. He in particular was not aligned with his values and his vision for his future. So it was a big change on his part to leave his job. And for me, it was really just embracing what I wanted to do. I'd kind of put storytelling to the side. I'd accepted it as just sort of a career path versus a passion. And I'd always had this bucket list item of writing a book, and I'd tried it a dozen times. It just didn't fit the mold of what I was trying to convey. And then I met this couple, and they really put so much behind the concept of throwing caution to the wind. Stop getting in your own way. And they live life in 12-month increments, which means they set goals that are within a 12-month time frame so that they're achievable. And then that goal just gets them closer to the next goal. And so when they decided they were going to go on this cruise, instead of saying, oh, it's so much money, let's just put it on a credit card and just do it, they thought, well, now we just need to make this amount of money so we can go on this cruise. So they really break it down in very practical, feasible steps. And we started thinking in that way too, like, if we're not happy here, why are we here? And so the pandemic hit, we packed up, we left, we moved to Columbus, Ohio, which was a great location for our careers and for our family. And the rest is kind of history. So it's really just, it's the idea of not convincing yourself you can't do it, instead figuring out how.
Wow, that's incredible. And I've got to experience that journey, watch you kind of go through it. So I am truly a fan of you and your husband, your friends, and what you did. You know, Erin, my mother was in her 80s when she finally wrote her first book. And one of the things that I learned from watching her was kind of get the inner critic off your shoulder. Yeah. You know, just start. Because that's what I asked her one day. I said, what made you do that? She said she's always had the story to tell, but she just needed to tell it. Yeah. And one day she removed the inner critic and she just started writing. You stop preparing. Don't worry about what it takes to get it published. Just start writing. And one thing led to another, and boom, she had a published book. Was that kind of your journey too? How hard was it for you to get started writing that book? Because you've already said you've got, you know, your husband, your 3 children, you've got jobs. I say jobs because I've watched you with your hands in almost everything. How do you start a book too?
Yeah, it was hard. There was a really pivotal moment where I was interviewing the Bakers, is their last name, Tiffany and Mark Baker. They own a company called 3SI, Three Sisters Investments. And I was interviewing them and I just got emotional. And I said, I really want this. And they said, we want this too. We're here with you. And that was like all I needed to hear, because for so many of us, there's so many fears, right? And Harvey, that's one of the things that I love so much about your philosophy and your way of living is it's a basically anti-fear mindset, right? Like if you're leading with fear, that contributes to so many other negative emotions and responses and everything that comes from that. So once I voiced that and they were able to respond to it and we kind of nipped it in the bud, it was like, okay, that's out of the way now. My fear has been put out there. It has been accepted. It's not a problem. It's just there. Let's just keep going forward. And we did. And it turned into something pretty great. And who knows if it'll be a bestseller or if 10 people read it. That's not really the point. The point is that I did it. My kids saw me do it. I accomplished something that I set forth to do the time I was a little girl. And now it's kind of like, well, let's just see where it goes and what this path leads to.
You know what's amazing about that, Erin? It becomes your legacy. You know, imagine if my great grandmother, my great grandfather, my grandfathers, if all of them had books or YouTube videos, how much more I would, you know, yeah. And that's what's neat about my mother. My mother passed about 2 years ago, but I still have her book. And I'm able to read that book and remember those stories because we lived them. So what you're in fact doing is documenting your experience, and that is so cool. You know, you talked about a mind of fear. And, you know, one of the things that Erin knows that I talk about often is shifting your perspective from a mind of fear to a mind of love. And every day you get up, you know, you kind of, you know, I would draw a line, horizontal line, put fear below it and love above it, and ask for words that are synonymous. Yeah. Ask for words that are synonymous, you know, synonymous with love, kindness, respect, you know, appreciation, beauty, all these great things. And then fear, you know, hatred, jealousy, envy, all these negative emotions. And every day we wake up, are we living a mind of fear, which can really keep us down because the ego can tell you, you're not good enough to write a book. What makes you think you can do this? You know, you've got, a parent, you've got children to raise, a family to raise, jobs. You don't have time for this. But a mind of love says, you know what? Your life, you're limitless.
Yeah.
You are
And you have
limitless.
something worth saying.
There you go. You have something worth saying. And again, the ego will quickly come in and say, well, what if nobody reads it? So what? You know what? You have lived your best life, no regrets. And that gets me into one of the questions I want to ask you, Erin. What is the one decision you made that changed the course of your life? And there may not be one, there may have been many, but is there a single moment, a time that you can reflect on that really you said, you know what? I am changing the direction of my life at this very time. There's an old saying that you remember when you start living your best life. You remember, and you said this you said this just recently, you almost have to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that gets you to that point where you have the courage. And you know what? I don't care anymore. I'm not doing it this way ever again. I'm tired. It's not working. I'm going to take that leap of faith and I'm going to do boom. What was that moment like for you?
Yeah. I mean, oh gosh, there's so many.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been progressive. I would say the pandemic was a pretty pivotal point for us just because we finally had time to sit and reflect. And that can be the hardest part when you're running and gunning constantly, especially if you have little kids. But even if you don't, and you're just working a really demanding job, and you've got so many people to report to who are relying on you, who have pressures on you, and sitting and thinking about yourself at the end of the day is usually just not on the table. So the pandemic really opened up that door for me and my husband. And he had a similar realization too when he decided to quit his job, and he loves music and decided to get back to music. And it was, we tend to feed off of each other that way. And he wrote his first album while I was writing the book. And it was really exciting.
I love that. I have to say, I love that he wrote his first album. I was so glad to read about. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, and again, and he was the first person to kind of help me to reset my mind when I was writing this book. And I was just like, what if it's terrible? Like, what if, like, who am I? Like you said, who am I to write a book? What do I have to say that anybody's going to care to read about? And he would say, that's not the point. The point is that you want to do it. So just do it. And the bakers had the same mindset, and I pitched it to them a couple different times. And even with that, because I'm a pretty solid salesperson, it's been part of my career trajectory that has just helped to kind of carry me through. And I wanted to do it. And so I really positioned myself to a point where I couldn't stop and I couldn't say no, because I value my integrity and my ability to deliver as much as anything else. And so if I promised something to somebody, which I did to the bakers, I was going to complete it. And so that probably was part of the process, but it's just been progressive. And I constantly am trying to remind myself to put away the negative and focus on the present and just do the next right thing.
I love that. Just do the next right thing. I think the pandemic changed a lot of our lives in different ways. I know for me, one of my big mentors in life for living your best life was my father. And he's still alive, still with us. And he has lived his best life for as long as I can remember. He only does what he wants to do and rarely ever does anything he doesn't want to do. He retired in his probably mid or late 50s. Now he's in his mid 80s. And just for the last 40 years, as I've watched him, he lives his best life. And he has been not only an inspiration to me, but to my wife, my daughter, all of us. And, I learned from him that one day I had to make a list. And it was actually two lists. On one list, I put everything I enjoy doing in life. These things bring me happiness: watching football games, taking a walk, eating great food, vacations, and even just sometimes quiet time on my deck, right? It doesn't cost much to do that. And then on this side, here are all the things I'm doing that I don't enjoy doing. And one of those for me was I was in this organization. It was a volunteer organization, and I enjoyed the work, but then all of a sudden they wanted me to take on greater positions of responsibility. And as I started to do that and become an officer in that organization, I wasn't having fun anymore, because instead of helping the community. Now I was involved in the politics of the organization, meetings at 7:30 at night on a weekday when I've got to get up back then at 3 something in the morning to catch a 5 o'clock bus, So it was just, it drove me crazy. And one day when I did my list, I said, you know what? I've got too many things on this side of the list that I don't enjoy doing, not enough on this side of the list. So that was my moment. That was one of my moments when I said, things have to change. And I had to make those changes. And another time was when my daughter, she helped this lady. She was helping a lady in social services. And the lady had nothing. She was in an abusive relationship. There was some addiction. Her life was just kind of falling apart. But she was ready for change. So she said, I have to get out of this relationship. I have to get out of doing the things I'm doing. So she started working with my daughter. She was able to find a place to live, a new place to live. It's near grocery stores, malls, and all those things. She didn't have much money, but she was able to move into this place. And she was in her 60s, so she wasn't working, but she was free. She was able to enjoy small comforts of having a grocery store, a shopping mall, transportation readily available, her own place for the first time. And I remember one day as I was working real hard, and it's one of those days when I had like 12 meetings that day, and I'm thinking, yes, I'm getting paid, but am I living my best life? She, on the other hand, and I thought about her for a good year before I retired, was living her best life. And between my father and her, they were two big inspirations in my life that I needed to do something different and I needed to change. So with that said, Erin, I had to start incorporating certain habits and routines into my life to live a best life. Are there any habits or routines that you incorporate into your life daily that just help you achieve being where you want to be?
Yeah, so we talk about stress a lot in this society with, growing distractions and screens and all the things.
Yeah.
And, in our work environment, we live in front of screens all day. So a big part of what I do to just keep my stress at bay, to remember to put myself first, which may sound selfish, but it's not, right? Put your air mask, your oxygen mask on before the child. But to make sure that I am taking care of myself every day, I exercise. And that's not fancy. It's not, complicated. But it has evolved throughout the years. I was a swimmer my whole life through college. And then once I was out of college, I did triathlons for a few years, and I started running and did half marathons. And then I got injured, and that forced me to shift that. But I've always kept some sort of physical outlet in my life, whether it's, gardening tends to be one of my passions now, which I love for a number of reasons, because I can do it and I can be completely imperfect while I do it. And it still rewards me with beautiful plants at the end of the day, as long as I just give it some attention. And it is a great creative outlet too, but physical exercise has always been a really great outlet for me for just being centered and knowing that at the end of the day, I did something for myself, even if the rest of the day is centered around kids and clients.
That's amazing. You know what? You said it almost feels like you're being selfish. And I would say more people should be selfish when it comes to taking care of yourself. Because again, it's like you said, I can't help others if I don't put my mask on first.
Right.
I'm not at my best. So I applaud you for that. And
there's no need to be a martyr.
There's no need to be a martyr. And if gardening makes you happy, you're bringing your best self into the world. You know who sees that? Your kids. Your kids, your neighbors, your husband, your family. They see you. They see the light in your eyes when you're gardening or when you're in the swimming pool. Even if you're not swimming competitively, it probably still brings you joy to be in the pool. And they see that.
Yeah, so. There's sort of a natural element that comes with it after you've done it for so many years. So, but you've really got the self-care piece well established, and you did even when we were at VA and you were working 15-hour days. So how did that journey kind of evolve for you?
I think you have to have boundaries. And I was able to set them, and I set expectations. Like everybody knew that when I was off, I was off. I wasn't the person who's looking at their BlackBerry, their iPhone, work iPhone, that is, after hours. When I'm on that 2-hour commute home and traffic and all that, I'm listening to music or podcasts or something that entertains me and calms me. And I am not responding to the beep, that says somebody has a message for me at work. So I had to set boundaries. And it's one of those, I learned at an early age. I worked hard. I worked extremely hard. And when I was at work, I gave 100%. And like you said, it was greater than 8 hours a day, right? Even though that's what you get paid for, it was much greater than 8 hours. But when I'm off, I also played hard. So in my life, and my wife and I have enjoyed boating, Harleys, vacationing, walking, exercising, anything we can do. The other thing that I enjoy doing, and, we talked about what do you incorporate in your daily life that kind of brings that balance, right? For me, it was gratitude. Gratitude is a big one that plays a huge role in my life because I am grateful for my health. I'm grateful that I can walk on a beautiful day, even though it's raining today, but when the rain stops, I can go outside and take a walk. I can sit on my deck. I can enjoy my new granddaughter and my daughter's extended family because she recently got married. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for my family in Philadelphia. I'm just grateful for so many things. I'm grateful for my electric vehicles in my garage. I'm a car person. I'm just grateful for so many things. And that really helps bring that balance and perspective in my life. And I know gratitude plays a huge role in your life as well.
It does. It does. And, as we're listing off some of the things, my initial thought was, I hope you are grateful to yourself because you opened up all of those avenues for yourself, right? And that's kind of what we started focusing on was if you're not happy with where you are, figure out what you need to do to get there. And then be grateful that you took that risk, that you threw caution to the wind, that you put aside the inner saboteur and, and you just embraced who you are because so many of us and I came from a wonderful grounded family. I'm very blessed in that sense, but the world changes and every generation kind of has this opportunity to learn new things and to evolve to an extent, and giving yourself the permission to be different from where you came from is really hard. And it is something that you should constantly be rewarding yourself for. Good job putting yourself out there today, being your whole self and not worrying about someone not liking it or it not fitting a mold. Because that's probably my biggest, not fear, but something that I constantly focus on staying away from is putting myself in a box. That's just who I am. I like structure in my day. I don't like structure in my my overall approach to life. I like for there to be some sort of flexibility for me to change constantly because I will.
Erin, see, for those listening, Erin is throwing out key words that she knows I'm going to react to, and one of them was the inner saboteur.
I know that earlier, that is a good one for you.
Earlier, we talked about getting the critic off your shoulder, right? And you're right. Another way to say that is the inner saboteur, which is the one that, again, tells you all the reasons you have to stay in that box. And you have to perform in the box that you're describing. Because if you go out of that box, how dare you? Who are you to do that? And if you go out of that box and you get challenged, that's one of the biggest reasons why I think people stop and they don't push the envelope is they experience a setback. They experience a challenge. And throughout your life, and I know throughout mine, I've had a number of challenges. I've had a number of setbacks. I've had to deal with difficult people and situations at times. And I think for me, the key to all of that is it's not what happens, but how you respond that matters most. And in my life, when I have experienced the most painful episodes of my life, and I know like one day I was mad, I was just furious. It's just one of those days at work. It was back, about 15 years ago. It's been a while now. And I was on the way home and it's Friday evening. I'm stuck in traffic. I'm mad. It's just like, oh my God, it's Friday. I got to get home, get away from this. And I normally don't have days like that. I just so you know, I spend 99% of my time very happy, but I catch myself falling below the line in that mind of fear, and it takes a conscious Harvey to lift myself back up to that mind of love. And here's an example when I did that. On that trip home, when I was so upset, I saw a bumper sticker on someone's car, and I don't remember exactly what it said, but it said something like, if this is happening to you, there's probably a good reason for it. And that just set me off right away. And my mood did a complete 180, Erin. I went from being frustrated and upset to realizing what I've learned from my parents. And that is, it's not what happens, but how you respond. And once you overcome that challenge, you've overcome it. It doesn't happen again because you've now elevated yourself to another vibrational pattern. Like, you've become, it just no longer affects you anymore. And I knew that the conflict I was having at work, they say that the people who are your greatest nemesis in life are there to play the perfect role and teach you the best lessons in life, and that you should thank them for that. So I'm able to look at difficult situations, difficult people, smile, and I literally smile at them. And I say, what am I to learn from this situation? What am I to learn from this person? Because ultimately it's making me a better person. And that's taking it from a mind of love, whereas a mind of fear would say, I've got to get back. It's retaliatory, it's jealousy, it's anger, it's frustration, and we don't belong there.
Yeah, right. I mean, and that's so much harder to do. You have come so far in your discipline with it, because it takes discipline to keep your mindset above the line. And and I always refer to that too. And I've had folks who have referenced that from different practices and such. And it's funny because people will reference it in relation to others and forget to apply it to themselves, because we all have difficult situations with family, with work, whatever it might be. And we can easily look at others and judge them for being different, for not understanding where we're coming from. But that judgment is also that fear-based mindset, right? That idea that they don't understand, they don't know what it's like over here. And part of the purpose of the story that I wrote is to help people to get back to themselves. What makes you happy? Because I fully believe if we can have a society that focuses on not judging, on self-fulfillment, not in a selfish sense, but in a sense that drives their own personal purpose and spreads good through the world, I mean, will solve so many problems. And that probably sounds a little bit pie in the sky, but imagine the difference if folks stopped looking at everybody else and thinking about what those people are doing wrong, and instead look within and say, what can I do better? And that's what I try to convey to the kids. When they get in fights with each other, I say, you can get the same message across if you just take a breath and calmly talk to each other and come to a resolution.
Joe Vitale wrote a book, and it talks about Ho'oponopono. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And in there, he interviews Dr. Hugh Lin, who basically says what you just said, that if you look at the world and you don't judge it as they are all wrong, they are doing something bad, and instead you look at it and say, I created this because I create the world I see. So if I'm seeing things I don't want to see, I need to change my mindset. It's that old saying, see the world you want to see, be the person you want to be in the world you want to see, something like that. I have to get that quote right. But basically, when I look at things and if I see someone committing a crime on TV, or if I see things on politicians saying something I don't like, instead of criticizing, blaming, I have to go back to, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And what that does is it resets who I am as a person.
Yeah.
And I cannot describe on this podcast the power of doing that. I just can't. Because everybody watches you, whether you think they're watching you or not. And they're going to watch how you respond in certain situations. And you know what? People are sick and tired of being hurt. They are. They're sick and tired of being frustrated, angry, jealous, all those things. And if they see more people responding with, you know what? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I love you. Please forgive me. If they see people responding with that, and then not only that, but you're living your best life, that's really the behavior you want to set for those 3 beautiful children, your family, my granddaughter. That is the behavior you really want to set. So I think that is so important. Erin, let me ask you this. People always ask me, like, Harvey, what are your goals? What are your dreams? And I don't know. I don't really, and that's funny to say because I consider myself a strategist. But when it comes to my personal life, I don't know that I could tell you, like people always say, where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years? I don't know. And I think I'm okay with that answer because my life has changed. Everything when I used to do that, I was never where I thought I would be. And that wasn't a bad thing because I've enjoyed the heck out of my life. But what I've learned is I plan less on the future and more on what am I going to do next? At this very next moment, like right now, enjoying this moment with you, doing this podcast. But what am I going to do today? And how will I have fun? How will I be the best person I can be today? How am I going to walk in kindness today? How am I going to radiate love today? How am I going to do the inner work that today? And so for me, I'm very much, when I say use the word conscious versus drifting, I like to be conscious in the very moment that I live and just have fun. Because when I start to get too much into the future, I tend to worry. Will I have enough of whatever? Maybe money. Will it rain tomorrow? Doesn't matter. Today, how am I going to enjoy myself? So that's my own kind of personal philosophy. But what does it look like for you to think about today and the future?
Yeah, it's a bit of a combination of that, right? I don't like to know what I'm going to be doing in 5 years. I need some sort of flexibility.
Erin, it almost feels like you would be boxed in if you did, using your word.
Yeah. I need to know that it is up to me what that 5 years looks like, and I don't need a play-by-play of what that's going to be. There's got to be some sort of wanderlust to it that I have to explore, that I have to figure it out, that, I might be different in 2 years. I will likely be different in 2 years. My kids are all going to be teenagers, God help me, in 5 years. So the world is open. But it's with that intention of what can I do today to further my life? It doesn't have to be measurable success, but at the end of the day, I want to be tired because I did something good. It'll be a balance of meetings and going on walks with my kids. And I really just try to kind of take it day by day.
I appreciate that, Erin. And Erin, my final question for you is, what advice would you give to anyone right now that's listening that feels stuck, that feels like they want to change, but now is not the time? I can't do it yet. Maybe tomorrow I can do it. Maybe next year I can do it.
Yeah. I'm a bit pushy in that sense. Why are you waiting? But it's easy for me to say that because we already went through that. And it kind of takes some of those, like you referenced, pivotal points of change. In the book you'll read, you'll discover some of those pivotal points bakers had, significant family and life instances that forced them to stop planning, and say, like, okay, maybe we don't need to have $10,000 a month to live. And then suddenly they were living off of $20,000 for a whole year with a family of 5, which in today's day and age is very, very difficult. But it's mindset, right? So if you go into it and you think, I don't care what other people are going to say. And this was difficult for me, especially with, I'm not a huge fan of media for my own personal promotion. It's just not who I am. I'd rather have a conversation with somebody. But I've had to kind of put some of that aside and realize, I have things to say. Some people will like them. Some people won't. Those people are not my people, and that's okay. One of my favorite quotes was Keanu Reeves, of all people. And he said, there are 7 billion people in this world. Thank you for making my job easier and eliminating one who I have to take the time to potentially get to know, because we can't make everybody happy. And why would we want to? It's way too many people to manage. So find your niche, find your people, the ones who are going to support you, like you did for me and like I'm doing for you now. I mean, find the people who jive with you, who are going to help you to further your life in the direction that you want, because those are the people to keep around. And having that community of support makes a world of difference when it comes to taking that leap to the life that you really want to live.
Erin, I couldn't have said it better myself. That is so well said. And I've watched you do that as I've gotten to know you. And I think you're spot on. Whether it was COVID, whether it's someone that may die in your life, whether it's the birth of a child, normally it's some pivotal moment, as you described, that says, you know what, I've got to change. Mm-hmm. I will tell you, every time I come back from a funeral, I feel that way, because and I look on death as a transition. I don't grieve it like most people do. Like even when my mother died, I was so proud of her because of everything she achieved. And the one thing that I don't want whenever that time comes and I'm ready to transition is I want to look back and say, I did it. No regrets. I did it. I did it. And if you can say that, then I'm happy and I can go in peace. So I would say, when it's time to change. And that's when you get to that moment where you just say, again, I just can't do this anymore. And I look for people who are living their best life and I align. You don't get jealous of them, right? I don't get jealous of anybody. If I see you living your best life, I'm not jealous. I'm looking at you. I'm watching. I'm pulling your energy in to figure out, how do I get some of that and how can I do the same? So Erin, thank you. Well, good. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
I was just going to say it's attractive. Happy people are naturally attractive, right? So they, if you're happy with what you're doing, you're going to naturally bring people in who want to kind of follow in those footsteps.
Absolutely. Well, look, Erin, thank you as always. It's a pleasure to hear your story, to hear your journey. I can't wait for that book to come out. So I know you'll keep us informed as to when that happens. But keep writing, keep walking, keep exercising, keep planting those flowers and all those things that bring you happy. Keep expressing gratitude, keep walking in kindness, because that's what it's about. And that's why I call this the InnerWorks Podcast, because it's about doing the inner self work. It begins with me, Harvey Johnson, and the world I see. It begins with you, Erin Gregory, and the world you see around you.
That's right.
So thank you to the audience. And again, walk in kindness and peace.